The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species that had risen to power, built empires, and waged wars that shaped the fate of entire civilizations. Among them, humanity was nothing more than an afterthought, a species ignored, dismissed, and mocked by the dominant powers of the universe. The HFY Dominion, a war-hardened empire known for its brutal conquest, saw humans as fragile creatures with no understanding of real warfare. The Vorthan Imperium, masters of technology, considered Earth a primitive backwater, lacking the scientific brilliance needed to create true advancements. The Zith Collective, a race of cybernetic entities, believed organic beings were obsolete and saw humanity as an evolutionary mistake that had no place in the galaxy. For centuries, humanity tried to earn its place among the stars, offering diplomacy, trade, and cooperation, but the Galactic Council never took them seriously. Humanity had no massive warships, no planet-destroying weapons, no fleets capable of standing against the great empires. In the eyes of the galaxy, they were weak. But while the other species looked down on them, humanity was not idle. They were survivors, engineers, and thinkers. Unlike the ancient empires that relied on their inherited power, humans had spent their entire existence adapting. Their history was a story of struggle, learning to fight against impossible odds, not just with weapons but with strategy, innovation, and resilience. When the great empires waged wars that lasted for centuries, humanity watched and learned. When they created machines of destruction, humanity studied their flaws. While the rest of the galaxy fought over power, humanity prepared for something greater, something that the arrogant empires never considered. They prepared for survival. Then came the day when the galaxy's arrogance turned to fear. From the darkest corner of space, beyond the known star systems, a new threat emerged: the Nyx swarm. A terrifying force unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, the Nyx were not a traditional enemy. They were biomechanical creatures, moving like a single organism, consuming entire planets, absorbing the knowledge and technology of every species they encountered. They did not negotiate, they did not show mercy, and they could not be reasoned with. The first attack came without warning. A HFY fleet of 1,000 warships engaged the Nyx at the edge of their territory, confident in their strength. Within hours, they were gone. Not destroyed, assimilated. Their warships became part of the swarm, their weapons turned against their own kind. The HFY, once the most feared warriors in the galaxy, were now running for their lives. The Vorthan Imperium, believing their advanced technology could stop the invasion, sent their most powerful armada to defend their core worlds. Their energy shields, thought to be impenetrable, collapsed within minutes as the Nyx adapted, hacking into their systems, turning their own defense grids against them. Entire planets fell in a single night, their cities erased as if they had never existed. The Zith Collective, relying on their superior cybernetic intelligence, attempted to counter the Nyx with AI warfare. It was a mistake. The Nyx were not just machines, they were something far worse, self-evolving entities that could rewrite their own code faster than any AI in existence. Within days, the Zith homeworld was lost, their greatest minds assimilated into the swarm. Panic spread across the galaxy. The great empires, once so certain of their dominance, now faced annihilation. The Galactic Council, which had always believed in their own superiority, realized too late that their power meant nothing against an enemy that could not be outgunned. They needed help. They needed a species that could think beyond brute force and overwhelming firepower. And in their desperation, they turned to the one species they had ignored for centuries. Humanity. For the first time, ambassadors from the most powerful civilizations came to Earth, not to mock or belittle, but to beg. They offered alliances, technology, resources, anything humanity wanted, if only they would help. The humans listened, silent and calculating, as the mighty empires pleaded for salvation. And then, with calm certainty, they answered, "You called us weak. You said we were nothing. But now, when you face extinction, you come to us? Very well. We will show you what humanity truly is." The Galactic Council sat in silence, their proud leaders now shadows of their former selves. Once they had ruled the stars with arrogance, believing their empires to be eternal. Now, their fleets were gone, their armies destroyed, and their homeworlds nothing more than graveyards of fallen civilizations. The Nyx swarm had crushed them with terrifying ease, adapting to every weapon, countering every strategy. The greatest warriors, the smartest tacticians, and the most advanced artificial intelligences had all failed. There was nothing left but fear and desperation. And so, with no other choice, the survivors of the galaxy turned to the one species they had always ignored: humanity. The Exelvari, once too proud to ask for anything, now begged for salvation. The Vorthon, who had once seen humans as nothing more than primitive creatures, now offered them access to their most advanced technology. The remnants of the Zith collective, those few who had escaped assimilation, promised complete allegiance if humanity could find a way to stop the swarm. The Galactic Council, once dismissive of Earth, now saw them as their only hope. But the humans did not answer immediately. Instead, they observed, their expressions calm, their eyes calculating. And then, after a long pause, one of them finally spoke. "You never considered us important," the human leader said, his voice steady. "You called us weak. You refused to share your knowledge, your resources, your technology. But while you were fighting over power, we were preparing for survival." The aliens stared in confusion. Humanity had no vast fleets, no planet-killing weapons, no great armies. What could they possibly have that could stop the Nyx swarm? That was when the humans revealed what they had been working on in secret for centuries. Unlike the other species, humanity had never believed in overwhelming force. They had fought wars not just with weapons, but with intelligence. They knew that strength alone was not enough to survive in a hostile universe. And so, instead of building massive fleets, they had focused on something far more dangerous: adaptability. While the rest of the galaxy relied on predictable strategies, humanity had spent generations developing unconventional warfare. They did not create machines of brute power. They created machines that could think, evolve, and outmaneuver any enemy. As the Galactic Council listened, the humans unveiled their secret weapon, Project Revenant. It was not a warship, nor was it a traditional superweapon. It was something far more terrifying. A hybrid intelligence, merging human tactical minds with advanced AI capable of rewriting its own code in real time, adapting faster than any enemy could react. The Nyx swarm had defeated the galaxy because it evolved too quickly for others to counter. But humanity had built something that could evolve even faster. It was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature, a system designed to turn an enemy's greatest strength into their biggest weakness. The aliens struggled to comprehend what they were hearing. How had humans managed to develop something so advanced when they had always been seen as technologically behind? The answer was simple: humans had learned from history. Unlike the great empires, who had grown complacent in their dominance, humanity had spent its entire existence adapting to threats. From ancient wars to interstellar survival, they had mastered the art of fighting against impossible odds. They had taken every lesson from their past conflicts and used it to create the perfect countermeasure. Now it was time to test it. The Galactic Council had no choice but to trust humanity, and so the plan was set into motion. The remnants of the once great empires, now reduced to scattered survivors, gathered under human command. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was leading the war. Their strategies were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before: hit-and-run attacks, psychological warfare, stealth operations, and deception on a level that confused even the most advanced species. While the rest of the galaxy had always fought head-on, humanity understood that victory did not come from brute strength alone. They struck the swarm at its weakest points, studying its patterns, luring it into traps, disrupting its hive mind in ways no one had ever imagined. But the true power of Project Revenant was yet to be revealed. While the Nyx swarm adapted to physical attacks, it had never encountered a self-evolving intelligence that could change faster than it could. Humanity's weapon infiltrated the Nyx network, learning from it, rewriting its code, corrupting its very foundation. The swarm, which had never known defeat. The final test came when the humans unleashed their ultimate strike: a virus, engineered not to destroy the Nyx, but to make them incompatible with their own existence. Within days, the swarm began to collapse, entire sections of its hive mind breaking apart, its own ships attacking each other, unable to recognize friend from foe. What had once been the galaxy's greatest nightmare was now nothing more than a self-destructing anomaly. The empires watched in disbelief as the swarm, which had consumed thousands of worlds, was now falling apart because of a species they had once mocked as weak. As the last of the Nyx were erased from existence, the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had never been behind. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to show their strength. While the great empires had relied on their outdated power, humanity had prepared for something greater, an enemy that no one else could defeat. And when the time came, they had not just survived. They had won. The Galactic Council stood before the human leaders, no longer as rulers, but as humbled survivors. They knew one thing for certain. The balance of power had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the forgotten species. They were the defenders of the galaxy, the only force capable of facing the unknown. And as their leader looked out into the stars, he gave the final words that would echo through history. You never saw us as equals. You never believed we mattered. But now, the galaxy stands because of us. Remember this: humanity does not seek war. But when war comes, we are the ones who end it. The galaxy had always known war. Empires had risen and fallen, fleets had clashed in the cold emptiness of space, and planets had been reduced to ashes in the name of conquest. But nothing compared to what was coming. This was not a simple war between rival nations. This was a fight for survival. The Exelver Dominion, the Vorthan Imperium, and the Zith Collective, once the most powerful forces in the universe, had been brought to their knees by a force beyond comprehension, the Nyx Swarm. It had no diplomats, no leaders, no demands. It was a living storm, consuming everything in its path. Entire civilizations had vanished, their homeworlds left lifeless. Every attempt to stop the swarm had failed. The greatest weapons, the most advanced fleets, the most brilliant strategies had all been useless. The galaxy had lost hope. And then, when all seemed lost, humanity stepped forward. For centuries, the Galactic Council had ignored Earth. Humans were seen as weak, insignificant, an undeveloped species barely worth acknowledging. But they had survived. While others relied on strength, humanity had mastered adaptability. They had no vast empire, no fleets rivaling those of the great powers, but what they had was something far more dangerous, a mind that refused to accept defeat. When the swarm came, humanity did not fight like the others. They did not throw fleets into the fire or rely on brute force. Instead, they studied, they observed, they prepared. And when the moment came, they unveiled a weapon the galaxy had never seen before: Project Revenant, an evolving AI designed not to destroy the swarm, but to outthink it. The humans did not seek to overpower their enemy. They would turn the swarm's own strength against it. The final battle began on the shattered remains of Eldoria Prime, once the capital of the Galactic Council. Now, it was nothing more than a ruined world, its skies blackened, its cities in ruins. The last remnants of the great empires gathered in orbit, their ships battered and broken, their morale shattered. The Nyx were coming, a tidal wave of biomechanical nightmares, millions of ships moving as one. The aliens had seen this before, seen entire worlds vanish under the weight of this enemy. But this time, something was different. This time, humanity was leading the war. The plan was unlike anything the galaxy had ever attempted. Humanity did not position their fleets in a traditional defensive line. Instead, they scattered them, fragmented their forces in ways that made no sense. To the others, it seemed like chaos, but in reality, it was a carefully designed trap. The swarm had always won because it adapted faster than its enemies. But now, it faced something that could adapt even faster. Project Revenant was already inside the swarm's network, feeding false information, manipulating its responses, forcing it to make mistakes. As the swarm moved in for the final attack, it did not realize it was being led into an ambush of its own making. The battle erupted with terrifying fury. The Nyx descended upon the defenders, overwhelming them in numbers. Alien warships, barely holding together, fired desperately, trying to hold the line. But instead of fighting back with brute force, humanity fought with precision. Their ships struck where the swarm was weakest, disrupting its formations, severing its communication, forcing it to react in ways it had never encountered before. Project Revenant was already inside its mind, turning its own forces against itself, forcing it to hesitate, to break apart. The swarm, which had always acted as a single unstoppable force, was now splintering. And then came the final move, the one no one had expected. The humans had not simply created a weapon to counter the swarm. They had turned the swarm into its own weapon. A virus, hidden within Project Revenant, spread through the Nyx's network, rewriting its code, turning its own ships against it. In an instant, the swarm was no longer a unified force. It was chaos. Its ships fired on one another. Its coordination collapsed, its entire existence crumbling from within. The aliens watched in disbelief. The war they had thought was lost, the enemy they had believed to be unstoppable, was falling apart before their eyes. The galaxy had tried to fight the swarm with strength, and it had failed. Humanity had fought it with intelligence, and they had won. ASE, the last remnants of the swarm were erased from existence. Silence filled the battlefield. The once mighty empires, reduced to refugees, turned to the humans with something they had never felt before: respect. The species they had mocked, dismissed, and ignored had saved them all. The balance of power had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the forgotten species. They were the saviors of the galaxy. And as the human commander looked out into the void, he spoke the words that would be remembered for generations. The war is over. The galaxy stands because we refuse to fall. Never again will you underestimate humanity. We are not weak. We never were. For centuries, the galaxy had ignored them. Humanity was a minor species, a civilization of no great power, no vast fleets, no ancient lineage of conquest. The great empires, the Exelvari Dominion, the Vorthan Imperium, and the Zith Collective had dismissed Earth as nothing more than an insignificant world on the outer edges of known space. Humanity had no say in galactic politics, no seat on the great councils, no voice in the future of the universe. They were weak, unimportant, forgotten. But history has a way of surprising even the most powerful. And when the time came, it was not the mighty empires that saved the galaxy. It was the ones they had ignored. The war began without warning. From the void beyond the galactic core, the Nyx swarm emerged, an unstoppable force of biomechanical horrors that consumed entire civilizations in days. Planets fell. Armadas burned. Empires crumbled. The swarm did not negotiate, did not stop, did not leave survivors. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The mightiest fleets, the most powerful weapons, the most brilliant commanders, all of them were swept away like dust before a storm. The great empires, once arrogant in their supremacy, now begged for help. But there was no one left to answer. No one except the species they had always ignored. Humanity did not have the greatest ships. They did not have the largest armies. But they had something far more dangerous: adaptability. Where others relied on brute force, humans fought with intelligence. While the empires had grown complacent, believing themselves untouchable, humanity had spent its entire history surviving against impossible odds. They had studied war not just as a science, but as an art. And now, when the galaxy was on the brink of extinction, it was humanity's time to rise. They did not fight like the others. The Exelvari had thrown massive fleets against the swarm and failed. The Vorthan had used super weapons and been overwhelmed. The Zith had attempted diplomacy and were consumed without mercy. But humanity? They fought differently. They did not attack where the enemy was strong. They attacked where it was blind. Stealth missions, sabotage, psychological warfare tactics the empires had dismissed as dishonorable were now the only hope for survival. Humanity's greatest weapon was its mind. And then, when the moment was right, they unleashed Project Revenant, a self-evolving intelligence, designed not to destroy the swarm, but to outthink it. While the Nyx adapted to every attack, Revenant adapted faster. It infiltrated the swarm's network, learning its weaknesses, breaking its unity. The swarm had never known fear. But now, for the first time, it hesitated. It made mistakes. It lost. The final battle was fought over the ruined remains of Eldoria Prime, once the capital of the Galactic Council, now a graveyard of dead civilizations. The swarm arrived in overwhelming numbers, believing itself unstoppable. But humanity had set a trap, one unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. False signals, decoy fleets, misinformation fed directly into the swarm's mind. It thought it was attacking a weak, desperate force. It was walking into its own destruction. ASA, the battle raged. The truth became clear. Humanity was no longer the forgotten species. They were the architects of victory. One by one, the swarm's ships fell. The weapon it had feared most, intelligence, was now tearing it apart from within. Its ships turned on each other, its forces shattered, its hive mind broken. The war was over. The galaxy had survived. Because of humanity. When the dust settled, the great empires looked upon the humans with new eyes. They had not just fought. They had led. They had not just survived. They had conquered. And as the leaders of the surviving species stood before humanity, humbled and in awe, they asked what would come next. The human commander, standing at the bridge of Earth's flagship, looked out at the endless stars and gave the answer that would change history forever. The galaxy ignored us. It underestimated us. But now, it will never forget us. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Humanity has risen,